Okay, great. Well, I think we're going to get started today. Again, thank you everyone for joining. My name is Eileen Jacob. I work on the LGO admissions team, and I'm joined by my colleagues, Pam Searle and Sharona Bollinger, who are also joining. You'll be seeing and hearing from Pam in just a little while, and Sharona will be working behind the scenes as well. So we will be joined in a little while by another one of our colleagues, Jennifer Barba, who is a member of the Sloan admissions team, to help answer questions as we get to the Q&A portion in a little while. So today's webinar is really designed to go through different components of the LGO application process in preparation for the round 2 application deadline that's coming up on December 1st. So please feel free to, sit back and enjoy. And if you do have questions that come up along the way, we encourage you to use the Q&A feature on Zoom to submit some questions. As a reminder, please try to keep your questions more general. If you have specific questions about your particular situation, we encourage you to email us directly, and we can talk more individually about any context, any circumstances that you have questions about. And of course, we'll try to get through as many questions as we can during the time allotted. So that being said, why don't we get started? For those who may not already know or are still a bit unfamiliar with the Leaders for Global Operations program, or LGO as we call it, it's our 2-year dual degree program in which you earn both your master's in engineering from one of 8 different departments through the School of Engineering, and you also earn your MBA from MIT through the Sloan School of Management. You are a full student of the Sloan MBA program and the engineering department in which you're enrolled, as well as the LGO program itself. So this means that you have a huge network of resources and opportunities and ways to get involved in the many extracurricular opportunities, case competitions, career resources, and much more, both as a Sloaney MBA student, as an engineering student, and of course, through the support of your LGO advisors as well. Something that makes our program unique is our partnership with about 25 partner companies who help fund the program and make it possible to provide on average at least 55% tuition coverage for every admitted candidate who doesn't already have full funding. We also guarantee each LGO student a 6-month internship as part of the program structure. This is part of what you'll experience as a research-based internship with one of our 25 partner companies at a different location across the US and some international locations as well. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to talk specifically about the application and answer your questions about applying to LGO. So first, in giving a little bit more of a perspective on the class profile, this is our snapshot of the graduating class of 2022. You can see here, we call them the LGO 22s. We have, as you can see, work experience is about 5 years of the average. The middle 80% range is usually between 2 to 10 years. This is not to say that we don't admit students who are outside of this range. However, since we do get this question quite a bit, particularly for candidates who have less than 2 years of work experience, it is generally more competitive for applicants to apply with at least 2 years of work experience. We very, very, very rarely would admit candidates who have fewer than 2 years of work experience. Looking at the GPA, as you can see, the average for the incoming class is a 3.7. The middle 80% range varies a bit from a 3.5 to a 3.97. Again, this is just one facet of a candidate's application that is taken into consideration. We don't have any minimum GPA expectations or any cutoffs along those lines, just something to keep in mind. And as a reminder, and you might hear me, you might hear Pam saying this again throughout the presentation, it is a very holistic review process. So there is, again, not one part of an application that will make or break an applicant's chances of admission. So looking on the bottom portion, previous studies do vary a bit each year. However, we often have many students from engineering backgrounds, among other STEM representation, as you can see on the left chart. Industries, we do have a variety of different backgrounds as well. Many from this past year came from places including energy and oil, auto and transportation, technology and manufacturing, and biotech as a quick sampling. So As I mentioned, it is a very holistic review process. I warned you I would mention it a few times. And so we are looking each year to build the strongest possible class with diverse industry backgrounds and perspectives. So that's something to keep in mind. And as you're looking at applying, it may be helpful to also know that you only submit one application that is reviewed by the School of Management at Sloan, as well as the engineering department you are applying to, and the LGO admissions team. So you don't need to submit multiple applications. During the review process, we are scoring you on different competencies. So things like how well you will work on a team, how you solve scientific problems, how you've performed in advanced STEM courseworks and projects, how you communicate change and get buy-in from those around you, and how your academic goals fit with your chosen engineering department, among many other things. So Pam and I are going to go through these three primary categories of the academics, your professional, and your personal qualities of an application to discuss each of the components in a bit more detail. So I'm going to start with the academic performance piece. So the first bullet here is academic record, and that is looked at closely by both the Sloan School and your engineering department. We are looking at your GPA, of course, but also the classes you completed, any trends in your grades over your academic terms as well. The engineering department is particularly interested in any STEM courses that you've completed. So while you don't necessarily need to have completed all aero astro classes, for example, in order to be considered for their department, they, like other engineering departments, will look for evidence that you've mastered the fundamentals of engineering so that you'll be able to hit the ground running when you start your engineering courses for your master's. It's a good idea, if you haven't already, to check out our website on each specific department to learn if there are any particular courses, prerequisite courses that each department looks for. Mechanical engineering is one example that does offer some guidance on prereq courses they suggest to prepare for the program. Other departments like the chemical engineering can give specifics about the type of math and quantitative skills an incoming student should be comfortable doing before they start the program to also help manage expectations and gauge fit for the program. Additionally, our office is, of course, happy to answer questions you may have about any courses you've completed and whether you'd be a competitive candidate for a certain department. So this ties into quantitative proficiency, so I'll jump down to that for a moment. If you're very interested in applying to a certain department, but unsure if you have enough of the quantitative background, we can help and also offer suggestions if it's possible to take coursework either during the application process or after you've applied to bolster your skills. So it's important in your application to indicate if you are currently working on improving your quant or engineering proficiency by taking any online courses, to let us know, or you can always email us and we'll add that information to the rest of your application materials. So standardized test scores, as many of you probably know by now, we are in the process of modifying our policy. And so for this year, due to issues around accessibility and fairness, given the COVID situation, it is not a requirement for candidates to submit a GMAT or GRE score this year. Those who do not submit a GMAT or GRE score will not be viewed negatively, and it will not have any negative impact on your application. So that's something important to keep in mind, and a question that we get a lot. You are, absolutely welcome to submit scores. They will be factored in if you submit them. They could be expired scores as well. Even the EA exam, if you've taken that. Other supplemental materials can also be added to your application this year, including any certifications or other non-degree coursework that you can include if you want to further show your analytical abilities. Again, it's a completely personal decision based on your circumstances. It's an option to submit. If you do not submit those, it won't be viewed as a negative, but you do have that option. So we're going to shift a little bit now to talk about professional accomplishments. So first bullet, talking about career progress and impact and leadership. This can include, and this can also be included within your letters of recommendation, your cover letter, your resume, and the org chart, which I'll talk about in a moment too. Those are all part of the online application to give context into your current role, what you're doing, and your organizational structure. So looking at the letters of recommendation, first of all, we ask for two. And one is specifically requested from a technical source. And that means someone who can speak to your analytical acumen, technical expertise and depth, quantitative problem solving, and just the ability to look closely into a technical problem and how you go about solving those problems. This is usually submitted from someone who you've worked very closely with in this type of research-based or technical role. It can be from a former professor. However, if you've been out of school for a long time and don't feel as though a professor could provide a more recent indicator of your skill sets and technical abilities, it's absolutely acceptable to submit from a supervisor or other senior colleague or manager to supply that technical letter. And as more, again, as a more recent snapshot potentially of your technical abilities. This is a bit of a judgment call on your end on who you think would provide the best detailed examples in this matter. The other letter of recommendation is from a professional source. So ideally, again, from a current or former direct supervisor, someone who has worked with you on a regular basis and can speak to your who you are as a teammate and your future leadership potential, and offer examples as well. And that, that being said, it's important to keep in mind that the title of these individuals is not as important as the details that they can offer about their experiences working with you, or about your problem solving and analytical skills. Again, your potential for future success. So keep that in mind. We'd rather see a letter from someone who has worked with you closely versus someone who has a very high title in a company that you're working for. Some advice too is to make sure you're giving your recommenders plenty of time to write these letters. It's also good to help give more context about your graduate study plans. If you discuss your interests in the programs you're applying to with them, why you're pursuing your graduate degree, for example, and just give more information to them about what you're envisioning for your next professional steps. So talking next about the cover letters, it's important to treat the cover letter like a professional cover letter and share more about yourself, also explaining how you would fit into the LGO program. So like other cover letters, this is your chance to thoughtfully include one or more examples that illustrate how you question the status quo and think outside the box to offer innovative ideas and solutions from your professional experiences so far. This does take some time and reflection, as it can be challenging to put together this compelling snapshot of yourself in 300 words or less. So give yourself time to work on your draft and think about the features of yourself, of why you would be a strong fit into the Sloan and the LGO community. Also talking about the resume next. Again, more of a snapshot. We ask for a one-page resume, and there are specific formatting instructions included on the application, but generally we ask that you include information about your educational background, your work experience, and any other additional information that you feel is relevant to include. So that could be, languages spoken or other extracurricular activities or community service, technical skills or certifications, or any other special skills if you feel that's appropriate to include as well. This is, again, meant to be an outline to highlight your career progression, noting not just the responsibilities that you had within each position, but think about also highlighting the impact that you've had within each role and the company you were in. So you will get the chance to provide more details if needed about your work experience and your impact in the work experience section of the application, which allows you to elaborate and share more details than what we ask on the one-page resume. Okay, so I think at this point, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Pam, who's going to talk about the personal qualities that we look for in an LGO application.
Great, thanks, Eileen. So in addition to the academic performance and professional accomplishments, we're also looking for personal qualities or attributes that make candidates a good fit for the program. These personal attributes are highlighted in your statement of purpose, your 60-second video statement, and in your interview. We're also looking for your personal qualities through any leadership you've done outside of work. Some examples would include volunteer work, mentoring, professional development, or sports teams. We want to make sure that you are a good cultural fit for the LGO program. LGO is designed for students who are interested in the intersection of business and technology, who want to become industry leaders, and who see problems and solve problems. We often say that LGOs get things done. LGO students are also incredibly humble and extremely collaborative. So we're looking for candidates who show us through both the application and the interview that they are a good match for the LGO program. The statement of purpose is a short essay outlining why you would like to enroll in the engineering department that you choose. This is a great opportunity for us to learn about your passions and what you want to focus on while you're in the program. We can learn a lot about you from this essay, so I encourage you to be specific. The video statement is designed to help you add color and context to your application. We're looking to better understand your presence, your passions, and your interests. How you approach the video statement is completely up to you, but feel free to use both professional and personal examples. This is a great place to add anything that you may not have already had the opportunity to mention anywhere else in your application. Another area where we're looking for your personal presence and fit for the program is during the interview. Interviews are behavioral based, where we'll ask you to reflect on something that has happened in the past to answer our questions. The interview is a great opportunity for us to get to know you better and for you to get to know us. So here are the application components. As you can see, it's a pretty lean application. And as a reminder, Eileen touched on this, but you'll just submit one application for the LGO program. We're really looking for mission-driven students who have a history of leadership and impact, but who are also talented engineers who can use analytical tools to solve complex problems. And Eileen mentioned this, but we do use a very holistic evaluation process, and all applications are reviewed at least twice. So I have a few overall tips for the application. Again, Eileen sort of mentioned this earlier, but for recommendations, choose recommenders who truly know you and can speak in the most detail about your skills and abilities. At least one of those recommenders should discuss your engineering abilities, either in the classroom or in complex applied situations, but this technical recommender does not have to be from an academic source, particularly if you work in a very technical role and if you've been out of school for a number of years. For the engineering statement of purpose, be as clear and precise about your academic interests as possible. So if there are classes or professors that you're really interested in working with, feel free to mention that here. We often use this statement to help pair candidates with advisors. For the video statement, although it's nice to have an interesting background, just make sure that we can hear your audio. And finally, just be yourself. We're really looking to understand your interests and your passions and your personal story. So next we have the application deadlines. Our final application deadline is round 2, which will be on December 1st. So in round 2, you can either apply through the MBA system or through the engineering system. We don't have a preference where you apply, but it's really what you want for your backup plan. So for example, if you apply through the MBA system and we're not able to admit you into LGO, you would be automatically considered for the full-time MBA program. And it works similarly on the engineering side. So if you apply through engineering and we're not able to admit you into LGO, you'd be considered for just a master's in engineering. And with that, I will pass it back to Eileen.
Great, thanks, Pam. Okay, so now that we've gone through an overview of the different parts of the application, we're gonna start looking at some of the questions that have been submitted by all of you. So thank you again for submitting your questions. I can start with the first one about work experience and what qualifies as full-time work experience. And so volunteer work does not count as full-time work experience. If you work in a nonprofit or a startup, it could count as full-time work experience if you're working full-time within that project or within that company, if you're fully employed and working. But you know, it has to be full-time. Generally, postgraduate work experience is what we typically see. And so internships that have been completed during undergraduate studies do not qualify as full-time work experience either.
Great. So we have a question here about submitting the GRE score after the round 2 deadline. So you are able to If you take the GRE after the round 2 deadline, you are able to email us at lgo@mit.edu, and we can update your application with your new score. However, if you take it more than 1 week after the deadline, it's not guaranteed that it will be used in the review process. So we're reviewing applications throughout the month of December, but again, there's no guarantee past 1 week past the deadline if it will be used. So try to get your scores in as soon as you can and as close to the deadline as possible.
Okay, another question we have is, where is the best place in the application to include whether a candidate's taking any additional courses to bolster their quantitative or engineering skill sets? So one suggestion there is in the online application, there's an academic section where you're inputting, your academic history, and there's an optional option to include more information or context about your academics. And so that could be, it's just a couple of sentences at most, where you can add a quick update that you're taking additional courses, and when you anticipate completing them as well would be helpful if you do have that timeline. So that could be useful. But if not, or if there's not enough space for what you would like to share, you can also email us, and and just let us know, and we can add that information to your application materials.
Great. So we have a question here on, do applicants have to mark anything in the application system to distinguish between technical and professional recommendations? No, you don't have to distinguish between them. The technical recommender should answer the 2 additional technical prompts included with the questions that they receive. We're looking for the most data that we can in our review process. So if you happen to have both of your recommenders know you in sort of a technical capacity, they're both welcome to answer those technical prompts, but at least one of your recommenders should be able to answer those 2 additional questions.
Okay, sorry, I was talking into the mute of this, but another question is just how classes will look for next year, and if we have other information about that. So, it's a good question. We've been getting in a lot. At this point, the fall is not yet confirmed, but I can definitely say, what's been really great to see for the fall semester this year is that any student who has wanted to be on campus can, and it has been able to for the fall semester, with students being able to take some classes in person as well as online. So we've had a pretty successful hybrid model for the fall semester that we will continue for the spring semester as well. And so hoping, that we will have more information about the MIT, regulation and how to move forward for the fall. Hoping also, in my opinion, the longer that we wait, the more flexibility we could potentially have in planning for the fall. So while there is, chance that it could still be probably a good chance, some sort of hybrid model for the fall, we are hoping by next year to have more return to normal, quote unquote, normalcy, and more opportunities to connect in person in a safe manner. And another quick follow-up was about the visa support given to international students. There is ample visa support for all of our international students. Generally, that comes from our International Services Office, and they help in answer any questions, any specifics about your visa situation. Our team, as well as the Sloan admissions team, is very responsive and helpful in working with students on a case-by-case basis for their visa concerns. And so just something to keep in mind, that you will definitely have the support you need in obtaining your visa.
Great. And we have a question here about applying through engineering. On the engineering site, it shows the round 2 deadline as December 15th. But our deadline is December 1st. So this is correct. If you're applying through the engineering system, you do have until December 15th. We follow sort of the engineering protocols over there. So, again, if you're applying through the Sloan system, it's December 1st. If you're applying through the engineering system, you do have until December 15th.
Okay, great. Thanks, Pam. So another question is about the letters of recommendation, and can both recommenders provide technical information or only one? only one is needed. However, if your second recommender would like to add further context about your technical abilities in their letter, that's perfectly okay as well. They're welcome to include that information. So not a problem at all. And great question.
Great. And so now we have a question about the master's thesis requirement. This person is asking, do we assign an advisor? Yes, we do. So all LGO students complete a 6-month research-based internship at one of our partner companies. And so each student would be assigned a thesis advisor from the MIT Sloan School and from the MIT School of Engineering to help guide you on your thesis. And so typically students are on site at their internship location, and your thesis would fly to you, or if you're local to Boston, they would just head over to your internship site, but you'll have lots of support to write your thesis.
Okay, thanks. So another question is about how work experience versus academic performance is looked at and compared in an application, especially if a candidate's been out of school for a while. It's definitely a balancing act, because we want to make sure that students have a good academic foundation, but of course, work experience will add even more skills and experiences to contribute to your skill sets and strengths into the program. And so we're looking at the types of role that you have and the responsibilities and work that you do on a day-to-day basis. And, also taking into consideration which department of engineering you're applying to. And based on what you've indicated in your statement of purpose of, what research interests you potentially have and why that department is a strong fit for you, we'll be looking at, okay, the skills that you have from your work experience and academic background, how that would fit and how a student could be successful in that engineering department, and making a decision based on the skills that they have in combination from their academics and work experience for being successful in that particular department. So kind of a long way of saying how holistic a review process it is. And both, work experience and academic performance is looked at pretty closely, with, keeping in mind that work experience tends to be a more recent indicator of an applicant's skill sets, especially for those who have been out of school for a while. So I hope that does help answer that question for one of our candidates.
Great. And so now we have a question about the statement of purpose. The LGO statement of purpose has a 300-word limit. Could it be a few more words? So we certainly don't count the words. Obviously, if you go over 300, that's okay. But we do design it that way on purpose. So we design it to be short so that applicants will be concise and really be thoughtful about what they share with the admissions committee. So please do try to keep it to as close to 300 words as possible.
Another question too about whether if you have two recommenders who work at different companies, if you should include their both org charts. The answer is no, you do not. You only need to provide the org chart for the company in which you work, and your organizational structure. So I didn't get to this earlier, but the org chart is meant to provide context into the company hierarchy, your position and your role, who you report to, who potentially reports to you, just to get an understanding of the size and the organizational structure of your company. So that's why it's useful for that. But you only need to submit one, not one per recommender.
Great. And so now we have a question about the employment gap section and how detailed this section should be and how many months is considered a gap. So a few sentences would be fine. Sometimes people take off time, in between jobs to maybe travel or pursue a passion project, or if there was another circumstance, just please let us know in a few sentences, just to help give context to your application. In terms of how many months is considered a gap, I would say, use your best judgment. If it's more than a month or two, I would definitely just share with the admissions committee maybe what you were doing during that time, and just, again, to help give a little more context to your application.
Okay, great. So another question is about, if a candidate is denied to LGO and applied through the MBA application, when will they be considered for MBA admission? And so for candidates who apply in round 2 here, and if you're not admitted to the LGO program, you'll be considered for admission for the full-time MBA program for their round 2 application deadline and notification date. They always try to provide a decision for LGO candidates in this circumstance by their round 2 notification, and we'll certainly communicate too if there's any delays or updates around that timeline. But that's when you can generally expect an MBA decision if you're not admitted to LGO.
Great. We have a question about if an applicant was not admitted to the engineering department that they applied to in their LGO application, would they be considered for another engineering department? So very rarely, I would say, the admissions committee will maybe reach out to applicants who we think they might be more competitive in a different engineering department, or they may be a better overall fit for another department. Again, this is quite rare. So we encourage you to kind of do the work on this sort of before you apply to figure out where your best fit would be. We're always happy to look at transcripts, schedule a call with you, put you in touch with current students if you're deciding between engineering departments. So feel free to always reach out to us at lgo@mit.edu, and we'll be happy to help you think through your best fit for engineering.
Great. So thanks, Pam. Another question is about, sorry, I'm just losing my spot. Oh, sorry, folks. Okay, in the statement of purpose, if you need to include an advisor who you want to work with in the statement of purpose, if that's a requirement, it's not a requirement. No, the statement of purpose is an opportunity. If you do have if it's really something that you shouldn't force. if there is an advisor within the engineering department whose work you're really interested in and you'd love to dive deeper into their research, absolutely let us know about that, or any research areas within a department that you would want to focus on. You can definitely include that, or if there's certain partner companies who you'd really be interested in interning with and learning more about. Of course, that if you have those specifics, definitely encourage candidates to include those. It definitely helps show you've done your research about the program and what makes sense for you. It can also help engineering departments get a better sense of the type of work you'd like to do within their team, which is also useful in thinking about next steps when they do assign advisors.
Great. And so someone had a question for the recommendations. If you've been out of school for a while, can they both be from work? Yes, absolutely. I think certain engineering departments prefer academic letters of recommendation. So for example, operations research and AeroAstro tend to prefer to see an academic source when possible. However, if you have been out of work for a number of years and you work in a pretty technical role, and so you think your recommender would be stronger through a professional source, that's absolutely fine. We've seen a lot of different combinations be successful. So, use your best judgment and, really try to ask for recommenders who would know you the very best and write the most detailed letter.
All right. So another question is about the deferment policy. We've gotten a couple inquiries about that and whether a candidate can defer their admission for another year within LGO. It is possible. It's not something that is done very often. However, we do work with candidates who request a deferral on a case-by-case basis and see if that makes sense for everyone. And so it is an option. It is, as I said, it's not a common option, but definitely something we can explore with each candidate individually if needed.
Great. So we have a question about work experience. Does your most recent work experience need to be technical in nature? No, it does not. Our only real requirement for the LGO program is that you have a STEM undergraduate degree. A lot of students might have studied engineering or some other STEM degree in undergrad and then work primarily in business, in consulting, for example, and had never sort of worked in a technical role outside of, undergrad. So, and that's perfectly fine. So you can be very successful in the LGO program. So we're not looking for one specific type of work experience.
All right, great. So another question is about reapplicants and advice on reapplying, which is a great question. And we also get this a lot about, if a reapplicant has different chances of admission, and that is definitely not the case. It's the same review process, and many reapplicants, are very successful by the second time they apply, and so definitely not viewed in a negative way. I would say advice on applying, if you're in that position, is to make sure that you're addressing and any new areas, any changes or updates to your application compared to when you had previously applied, and what's changed essentially that has made you an even stronger candidate for this year. And so that might be helpful. I mean, obviously you're providing similar materials, and so we're looking at your academic and professional background, but focusing on updates and things that have made you an even stronger candidate since the last time you applied. It could be very useful and help show, again, to the admissions committee that, the additional strengths that you have as an applicant this year.
Great. We have a question about what makes a great video. So this is one of our favorite components of the application. It's really just for us to assess your personal presence, your English language skills. It can show a bit about your personality and to help us make sure that you'd be a good fit for the program. So, you can feel free to use personal examples. It's really just how you would introduce yourself to your future classmates. We don't show this video to anyone other than, the admissions committee, so it won't be shown to your future classmates. But I would say, sometimes applicants use props, or maybe they film the video in a place that's very meaningful to them. If they're an avid hiker, for example. But you don't have to be that creative. You can certainly just be at your computer, and it's just a one-take video. So, don't stress too much about it, but have fun with it.
Great, thanks. So another question is about, what to focus on in writing the cover letter versus what to include in your statement of purpose. And so that's a great question. And thinking about the LGO application, this is a combination of materials and components that both the Sloan School of Management looks for, as well as the engineering department. So when you're writing the cover letter, think of this as more of, as I mentioned, why are you a good fit for the program? And how can you contribute to the LGO and Sloan community? So thinking about your strengths and thinking about ways to highlight the key contributions that you would bring generally to the program is a good way to think about highlighting those strengths versus the statement of purpose. This is more specifically looking at what you want to do on the engineering side and what research interests you're really drawn to. And so that is where, again, you can be more specific about different engineering interests or research areas, and what you want to dive into, tying into any experience, previous work or academic experience that is a reason why you're interested in that department too, can be useful. But that's where you can be more specific about what research work you want to do as an LGO student.
Great. So now we have a question about the interviews. So will they be conducted by a member of the Sloan Admissions Committee or by an LGO Admissions Committee member? So the interviews are conducted by the Sloan admissions team, and we do have LGO admissions committee members and other LGO staff members to sit in on some of these interviews. So you may either be interviewing with just one Sloan staff member, or you may have two, depending. It's just sort of a random process.
Okay, great. So another question about years of work experience for LGO candidates. And so, like I said, the average is about 5 years. However, it really does vary depending on each applicant. And the middle 80% range is 2 to 10 years. And so I don't know if there's really an advantage or disadvantage to having, 4 or maybe 5 years versus 7 or 8 years. It really does just depend on each individual candidate's work experience and their reasons for applying to the program and what they hope to get out of the program. So that's something to keep in mind is really thinking about however many years of work experience you have, how that ties into why you're applying to the LGO program. Maybe you want to make a switch. Maybe you want to advance within your industry a little bit faster. Just being able to demonstrate that you've thought about that and you've thought about why the next step, particularly the type of research you want to pursue on the engineering side, and then obtaining your MBA and gaining those management skills would help you. So I wouldn't say there's really any advantage or disadvantage depending on the years of work experience you have. And as I said, it is helpful to look at the class profile and see where that most of the students fall, engaging your overall fit for the program too.
Great. So now we have a question from candidates who have professional experience in non-technical fields like consulting and finance, but with engineering backgrounds. The question is, how do they tailor their application to show they would be a good fit for their engineering department? Are they supposed to focus on their engineering interests and professors they would like to work with? So I would say, for those who are not working in technical roles, we'll be looking very closely at your transcripts and also your statement of purpose. So, really make a case for, why this engineering department? Why do you want to study this specific engineering department? What research areas are you most interested in and why? Do you want to transition into a new field? Are you looking to pivot? Really let us know and sort of make a case for your application. And again, be as specific as possible because this is really where we learn the most about you on the engineering side. Sometimes people are a little bit general. And that's just not as helpful in the admissions committee. So just be specific, do your research, talk to students, look into courses and research areas that you'd be interested in working on when you're at LGO.
Great. So another question is question about the resume and what should be included in the additional information part. And this, I'm happy to talk about that again. It is a bit of a judgment call on a candidate's end, but typically this will include any extracurricular activities or community service involvement a candidate has. It can also include any technical skills or technical certifications. Any special skills or interests, if appropriate, that you feel demonstrates more about your accomplishments and more about who you are and what you've done professionally during your work experience. So I hope that's helpful.
Great. And so now we have a question about reapplicants. If you've previously only applied to the MBA program, do you still have to provide the additional letter explaining how we changed since the last time we applied? So no, because technically the MBA application is a completely different application and review process with a different committee. It's a different program essentially. So no, you don't need to fill that out. If you want to add, for example, that maybe you think you'd be a better fit for LGO or something like that, or why you're applying to LGO now, you can certainly do that. We'll be able to see that you have applied to the MBA program. So if there's any other context that you'd want to give us, that's always helpful, but you don't need to share any updates since it's a completely different application.
That's a great question. Another is it acceptable if the video statement slightly exceeds 60 seconds? I'd say if it's over by like a second or two, that's completely fine. There's not a, severe cutoff once it hits 60 seconds. But I would say try and keep it as close to 60 seconds as possible.
Great, and now we have a question about tentative interview dates for round 2. We don't have the tentative dates quite yet, but I can say that historically, round 2 interviews typically take place at the end of January sometime. Sometimes they go into early February. So sometime, I would say mid-January to early to mid-February.
Okay, great. About recommendations, if a professional recommender is not our current supervisor, should we mention why we chose them? It's not something that you necessarily need to address in your application. If you do feel as though your decision for choosing one recommender over a supervisor does warrant more context, again, please feel free to email us, and we can, we can add that information to your materials. It's not something that is required. But definitely, as the admissions committee is reviewing applicants too, if they do have any questions or, anything they would want to clarify, they could reach out to an applicant and also get that information. So yeah, again, not required, but if you do want to share more context, definitely feel free and email us.
Great. So we have a question about interviews. What sorts of things should you prepare for the interview? And is there an additional interview essay? So yes, there will be an additional interview essay. You would receive that with your interview invitation. Our interviews are behavioral based. So there's lots of sort of questions that you can look up that are behavioral based questions, typical questions. So have some answers prepared. There's also a blurb on the MIT Sloan website for interview preparation. We also send out some information to interviewees, but I would say, one thing to really prepare is just to be able to answer, why are you interested in LGO? Why this program? There's lots of programs out there. So really make sure why you're really interested in specifically the LGO program.
All right, great. So another question that I might ask Pam for some input too about is relevant coursework in the application. Is it okay to include the syllabus of the courses I've studied while pursuing the professional qualification? In the relevant coursework space, I would recommend not including a syllabus of the courses, more of a list of the different courses. And you can provide a little bit of context, but I wouldn't include the entire syllabus. But wondered, Pam, if you have other thoughts on that too.
Yeah, a list is fine. You don't need to include the syllabus. I would agree with that.
Yeah, and because we're also looking at your transcripts and in your academics, and so that's sort of taken, and derived from your academics, from your transcripts as well. And we look at GPA, the courses you took, and the grades you got. If there is a ranking on your transcripts, we'll look at those. But again, not a deal breaker or a huge factor in making a decision. All of the information that's provided is taken into account for that final decision.
Yeah, and I would say very rarely this has happened, but if we do have any questions about any courses that you've taken, we can set up a phone call with you and get more information that way. So yeah, we'll reach out if we have any specific questions on the coursework. And we have another question here about, is the internship component required as part of the degree requirement? It is. So LGO we work with 25 partner companies at LGO. And so every admitted student would complete a 6-month research-based internship at a partner company. And this is how you write your thesis. You'd be assigned, again, an advisor from the engineering side and from the Sloan side to help write your thesis. Something that we may not have touched on is that also every admitted student for LGO receives a generous LGO fellowship, which is part of this sort of relationship that we have with our partner companies. So it is a required component of the application.
Great. Okay. Another question is, if an applicant has their own company, can they have a client provide a letter of recommendation? The answer is yes. Yes, that's definitely a good idea. If you have your own business, your own startup, whatever the nature of your company may be, definitely, okay to have a recommendation from a client, someone who's worked with you closely and can speak to how you are as, a professional and manager, and gauge your performance for graduate school. So definitely a good option if you have your own business.
Great. We have a question regarding resumes. If someone can't fill the volunteer work experiences, publications, and courses on their resume, but this information is on LinkedIn, would you review my LinkedIn information? So you're welcome and encouraged to submit your LinkedIn profile. We will look at that as part of your application. I realize that it's, a one-page resume is sometimes difficult to fit everything you'd like, but, use every piece of the application to share your story. So, use that video statement, use your essays, your cover letters, use every piece of the application to share you know, your sort of history and your work experience.
Another similar question from highlighting your work experience is highlighting informal independent learning and skills built during certain professional roles. So that's something, you know, it's hard to get into the nitty gritty on your resume. So I would suggest adding more context about that in the work experience section of the application, where you can add a little more detail without the one-page constraint of the resume to share more about, you know, teaching yourself certain skills or techniques that contributed to a part of a research project. That's definitely the place to add if you do have more context about the details of your work experience that you couldn't fit on your resume.
Great, and we have a question about the resume. We're asked to redact our contact details. Can we just totally remove them if we can't redact them? Yes, you can just remove your name completely, and that would be fine for the review process.
Okay, great. Another question is about our partner companies at LGO and how they evolve over the years. So they don't change every year. Many of our partner companies have been with us for, well, a very long time. Our program's been around over 30 years. And so there's many who have been around for, you know, since those days. And that's not to say that they don't evolve, however. We are looking for new opportunities to collaborate with companies that have opportunities that are of interest to our students. And so you may see over the next couple of years, a few more added around different focuses, around different things like energy and sustainability or more technology focused opportunities that it's sort of gauged on what we hear from our students and what we hear from candidates about the type of work they want to do and be exposed to. So it is a bit of a dynamic list each year, but they don't all change every year. They generally, we have our set list and then a few more will be added over the next couple of years is usually how the pace of those go.
Great. We have a question about additional scholarships. Are there any additional scholarships that folks can apply to through MIT? So in addition to the LGO fellowship, we also nominate a couple, you know, maybe 10 or so students for additional funding through the Office of Graduate Education at MIT. So we will work with applicants directly as they are admitted. We'll sort of submit an application for you on your behalf. And sometimes we do reach out to you to provide an additional essay. So that's something that, you know, we will sort of work with you on. And students can also be TAs. About a third of our students do that to sort of offset tuition costs as well.
Okay, maybe just one or two more questions as we get to the end of the hour here. One other question is around whether it's possible to add additional courses that are not formal that students have completed. So an example is MITx. You can include those in the supplemental information part of your application. That's where you can upload documents or, you know, certifications, screenshots, whatever it may be of other courses that you've taken that you would like to include.
Great, and maybe one last question here. Can MIT LGO students work at labs? So yes, MIT LGO students can get involved in the research side, on the engineering side. It's really, you know, how you want to allocate your time. Obviously, you're quite busy as a dual degree student. So if you know that that's really something that you want to pursue, more of the research side of things, you can absolutely do that. You might just have to prioritize that maybe over some other extracurriculars, but it is certainly possible. Yes.
Anything's possible at LGO. And so I think that's something you'll find. And if you've spoken with students in the program, there's so many opportunities and resources. It's hard to pick, really. It just sort of takes time management and figuring out what's most important to you and what you want to dive into. So, you know, that being said, Want to thank everybody for joining us today. I hope that this session was useful and you got some useful takeaways as you think about applying to the program. As we've mentioned, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. LGO@mit.edu is our email up on the screen there, or check us out on our website. But we're always happy to help, especially if you are applying by round 2, as you have any last minute questions that come up. We're always happy to connect. So hope to see you again at another event. We have a few other coffee chats coming up this month. So if you're available, definitely check those out on our website too. Thank you all for joining today. Stay safe and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.